So, this morning we have what some would call a tragedy, but I'm going to give you some harsh words that people don't want to hear. There's a reality check, a total reality check, and a realisation that the police in this country are fast losing the respect of the people. And it's because we can openly see the human trafficking that takes place. Now, we've discussed the human trafficking and the way the police act. So we're going to stop and start this video because there's quite a few bits in here that we need to discuss as we witness something pretty tragic in this country that they were openly warned about, totally openly warned about. They are fast losing the respect of anybody in this country for acting on behalf of foreign powers in a Nazi-style agenda. Rainbow people have taken over. Rainbow people have pushed them against the Zionists that you see. And this war is taking place in front of all of us, and the disrespect and the total lack of unity in this country to defend is becoming very apparent.
It is with a great deal of sadness that I have to report that in the early hours of this morning, a South Australian police officer was tragically killed in the line of duty. Brevet Sergeant Jason Doig was fatally shot. He was the officer in charge of the Lucindale Police Station. An incident occurred last night where three police officers attended an isolated rural property about 15 kilometres north of Bordertown. On arrival, the police officers in attendance were confronted by the occupant, a 26-year-old man. Upon being confronted, the occupant has shot and fatally wounded Brevet Sergeant Jason Doig, and he later died at the scene.
So we lead in with this drive for sympathy by naming names. Oh, the named officer and the named officer and the named officer, but just a man. Just a man. Don't need to know much about the man or the actual incident, which we'll go into in a second because they have to cover that in a news report. But there's a harsh reality now. A South Australian police officer was shot dead for entering private property. And now we have the sympathy mark. The children must sympathise with the imposter. And is he imposter? Well, look at the crown on his shoulder. This is the harsh reality at law now. And they're fast wondering why the people are losing respect for them when all they do is raise revenue for the state with their human trafficking. And this is the harsh reality that you're looking at as they already tried to false flag that red ensign in a shooting in southeast Queensland. But now you have a real dead police officer, a policy enforcer working for a foreign crown on your land at law now, because we're not talking about hearsay. We're talking about Supreme Court justice on court record defining it at law now, meaning that they are a technical occupying enemy on your lands, pushing you around for financial gain. And that's what they do. They revenue raise. Now, we haven't got into the incident yet, but what I want to point out to you is named officer, a man, haven't got to the incident yet, driven you into a sympathy right from the word go. And these people are evil. They're fucking evil people. And I know you don't like to hear this, but a foreign policy enforcer on your soil, pushing you around to raise revenue, is technically slavery. Human trafficking. Slavery. looking after you like a master instead of guardianing you like a child, pushing you around like a slave trader. Red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, more cash.
The occupant also shot Sergeant Michael Hutchinson, who received non-life-threatening injuries, and Michael Hutchinson has been conveyed to hospital in Adelaide. The third police officer, Constable Rebecca Cass, was not injured during the incident. The 26-year-old man was shot by police, and he's also been conveyed to Adelaide and is under police guard at this time. The two officers, Michael Hutchinson and Rebecca Cass, both provided assistance to Jason and the 26-year-old man at the scene prior to other help arriving.
See, they know now it's not about the people. It's about their agency, their policy enforcement with their ABN numbers and their foreign curial powers and their United Nations and all this stuff you're seeing collapse around the world right now. It's all about that. So you need to sympathise with the police force who said not a word about you. Right? So the police are feeling bad right now because one of their own, one of their foreign curial powers out there, while serving something foreign to the Commonwealth in a line of authority, it was shot dead. By who? A man. A man. And we still haven't got to the incident yet. We're driving sympathy for a policy enforcement agency that harms the people in the Commonwealth of Australia in human trafficking, real human trafficking, putting you under $1,000 fines for stupid little things, knowing that would drive your family into poverty. Human trafficking. And if this hasn't become apparent to all Australians right now in a world landscape, I showed you American and United Nations flags being torn down. Now I can show you United Nations flags on the Parliament building, demonstrating all of it itself here. So who do those police work for? Well, that's who they're sympathising with, and all the officers around Australia that took that oath to be party to that foreign curial power should sympathise with each other because the people have realised who they are. Who they are. Who they are.
As I've said, it goes without saying, this is an incredibly tragic incident for the South Australia Police, and I can only imagine what the family of Jason are feeling at this point in time, and I can speak on behalf of the police officers here in the southeast and the remainder of the police within the South Australia Police and right across Australia. The fact that no one is left untouched by this tragic incident. There wouldn't be one single police officer today who is not thinking about the sacrifice that Jason has made and the risk that is inherent in the role of policing, and that concern and care extends to family and friends of police officers as well. You can only imagine during the early hours of this morning the number of people who were wondering, waiting to hear whether or not it was someone they cared about that was involved in this incident, and I can only offer my most sincere condolences to Jason's family, and we're all hoping that Michael recovers quickly from his injuries.
Why were the officers called to the property?
There was a report of...
See, so again, not one word about the population, the country, or all about the police. So a death is very bad. No one likes to die or see a death. But sympathising with an enemy at law is also a crime. And this is the reality check that everyone's sort of been waiting for, isn't it? I warned you it was going to happen, and it happened. I warned you that it would happen in other countries, and it's happened. And now you're facing it here in Australia. No one respects the police anymore because of all the cameras that you've put up and the state that you became. The state of Queensland, you became, Pauline. Now, we're talking about South Australia here, but there's no difference the Australia Act 1986, Pauline, where all those states decided they should board the Great Seal of Australia and leave their line of authority behind and enslave the people in their persons. I think that's called personage. And here we come to the actual incident, and you're going to be shocked, aren't you, Pauline? You're going to be shocked. Everyone's going to be shocked that the police can get away with this stuff.
There was a report of the use of a firearm involving an animal. Police were investigating that incident. The full circumstances of their attendance will be part of a commission's inquiry. And we also have major crime and forensic response section up here at the moment at the scene investigating the circumstances. As you can imagine, this will be treated very seriously and a full investigation will be undertaken.
Were other people at the property at the time?
My understanding is, apart from police and the 26-year-old man, there were no other people there.
In today's day and age, with body cameras, they don't know what's going on and they won't tell you what's going on because they know they've done something wrong. The use of a firearm on a rural property, which is totally lawful. Shooting an animal on a rural property, totally lawful. So the police attendance to a man on his own property doing his own thing, and the man's now puzzled as to why they turn up. And I bet you that's where he turns into, fuck this shit. These people turning up onto my property and pushing me around. And that's the disrespect that police are starting to realise now. No, you listen here. It's what I was told over the phone by a local cop. Why the fuck should I listen here? Why? Are you my nanny or something? Are you here to nanny me into poverty with your $1,000 fines? You're here to harm your own countrymen? You're here to go to someone's rural property unannounced and flex yourself on them to the point where they might feel threatened by you, a thug force carrying actual weapons. And you think that's normal. You think that's normal to go around human trafficking with your firearms under the force of a gun. Under the force of a gun. Not the law, a gun. And now someone, we don't know who because we don't know this story, shot your officer dead on a field. Why? Because you flexed on someone else, believing you had a right to flex on behalf of who? On behalf of who? Let's define your line of authority on the crown, on your third eye, on your hat there, mister. Let's define it and clarify it at law before any more of your officers get shot dead working for Chinamen, working for WEF Rainbow Powers.
Can you tell us about Jason, his circumstance? He was from a neighbouring station?
Jason was the officer in charge of the Lucindale Police Station, not too far from here. He's been a member of the southeast community for somewhere over 15, 16 years, highly respected. He spent a lot of time at Bordertown and Narracourt as a relieving sergeant, highly respected by his peers in the southeast and right across Sapole. So this is a devastating day for South Australia Police.
How long has he been in the police force?
Jason joined in 1989, a career police officer. He was 53 years old and sadly lost.
See, not part of your community at all. Part of the policing community for the last 16 years. Worked his way up to being a sergeant in a station in South Australia near Bordertown. 16 years of service in their community, under their crown. Not you, the people that they police and fine and human traffic every day. No, not you humans. part of the community for 16 years, was put there by masters to be part of the community.
Shots were fired. What happened there? Were police there, as I said, long before?
At this point in time, we don't have a full understanding of all of the circumstances, and that's the reason for major crime taking the investigation. And obviously we're hopeful that we'll have a full understanding of all of the circumstances as the investigation unfolds.
You've been here for the morning, Commissioner. What's it been like out the scene in the community? What's the general feel?
I've spoken to the police officers who were one of the police officers who was in attendance, Rebecca. I've spoken to the team that have come in to assist in the response and to support the officers involved. What can you say? Police officers come to work knowing there are risks inherent in the job, but this is such a stark reminder of what those risks may result in, and this is a devastating event for the police at Bordertown, the southeastern police officers. The community have already reached out to the local police officers here. This is a tragic event that will have wide-ranging impacts across so many aspects of our community, not just police, but people who rely on police to provide that safety and security that they enjoy in our community.
You see how the media push the narrative too? Because it's all about them. It's all about the police and going to work as a police officer and their community, and how you're reliant on them, that the nanny is kind of saying to you that it's going to impact those little children out there that can't stand up for themselves, because when they do speak up for themselves, we push them around, and that might involve ending up dead, because of the way you act and the way you treat people. And then you sit there on the news and say not one thing about the actual community that you're supposed to serve. No. You say they rely on you, like they're little children. And we come down to this point of law again. Who do you serve in a line of authority at law? For you to sit there on the TV with your crown on your third eye, talking about your community and not the people's community, not the town itself. You just spoke about the town being reliant on you. Where's our sheriff? Why is policy enforcement invading all of the streets? Where's the sheriff to clean up all of the war crimes and the human trafficking that's been taking place before we go into World War III? Because that's what's being pushed across Zionist Middle East, and that's what's being pushed across the Swiss European markets, isn't it? Rainbow people versus Zionists, while police officers step into the background going, what the fuck do we say? Very interesting, right? That you rely on this unknown line of authority.
Police realised this was going to be quite a dangerous task. Did it seem
Police were responding as a result of a report, but there was nothing in the information that we are able to ascertain at this point in time that would have indicated it was a high-risk incident. You would describe it as one of those jobs that would be part of the daily routine for police officers.
You had obviously an earlier incident. Crystal Brook earlier this year got this incident overnight. How concerned is it to have these type of incidents happening this frequently with police officers being put at risk?
Well, just reflecting on the incident involving Ian Todd and Jordan Allerley back in May this year, we were incredibly lucky not to lose Ian on that day, and it was because of the quick response of Jordan and other people attending to assist that Ian survived that event. I think I can say that occurred a relatively short time ago, but these aren't events that we're dealing with day in, day out. Police officers do put themselves in harm's way. Police officers are injured almost on a daily basis, but such significant injuries and fatal injuries thankfully are quite rare in South Australia.
Is there anything more?
And there you have it, an admittance that their daily business is to invade your privacy, to come onto your private property unwanted. Whereas in the past you would have been able to deal with that situation by pulling a gun out and saying, "Get the hell off my land, you're trespassing." But not today. Not today, that the police will turn around and start a firefight because they wholly believe it's their land. Because they work for rainbow people. Rainbow people that believe they own it all because you'll own nothing. And he's just admitted it. His whole entire daily duty is to pester people in the private looking for crimes, looking for fines, looking for a way to revenue raise for the state, looking for a way for the state to get into your business at any chance they possibly can because they're your nanny. And not only your nanny now, they tried to jab you. And they human traffic you every day. And they put cameras up on the roads to do this for you automatically every day. They become slave masters, real slave traders, doing real human trafficking. Like real stuff, for real money. Your real sweat labour, putting you into sweat labour is slavery to pay off that fine, which impacts you and your family. Which nanny comes along and offers you mental health for not being able to cope with all of the oppressive bullshit that they push on you. And he's just admitted it, that it's a risk in the daily duties of a police officer because they invade the privacy of the Commonwealth. On behalf of who? What line of authority is on his third eye as we watch the world collapse into World War III? What line of authority anchors the Commonwealth into those international waters to play on an international stage in the very first place? Where did it come from? That's the question. And why did it get given the liberty to invade your private on behalf of the state?
I mean, I guess you look at every incident. Is there anything more the police can do to try and, I guess, keep officers safer and duty?
I can say absolutely that officer safety is paramount for us. We provide the right tools, equipment and training so they can do their job as safely as possible, but you can't get past the reality that policing often involves dealing with violent offenders, and the reasons for that violence are wide-ranging. Illicit drugs, mental health issues, inherent violent behaviour. That is a part of policing, and it is about having the right equipment, the right protective equipment, making sure it's used properly and people are trained to use it to minimise those risks, but you can't remove all risks.
About 20 years.
See, it's all about the money masters. All for your safety, for road safety, for police safety. Have to clad them full of United Nations military gear for their own safety, against the people that need to be guided for road safety. Find what they mean, and what they mean is that they're getting so bad at it that their police officers are no longer respected and have to be put into military-clad gear because they serve a foreign line of authority. No one's actually worked this out yet as the world starts to collapse, and this Zionist agenda is sort of at threat right now. Oh, that threat. While not only Israel is at war, but the countries that are involved in this. I saw the Pope go all the way to Scotland. Why would he go visit those Freemasons of that Scottish Rite? Freemasonry. That's pretty interesting too. So we're watching this money game and this world game around us, aren't we? Very interesting. When we're talking about all of these things on an international stage, and we listen to a police officer that hasn't mentioned one part of the country, the people in the country, the people he's supposed to serve. No. He serves some line of authority that is his command. and his community is that command structure under an oath of fidelity. So we could go looking at the oath that they took in the Parliament under their legislation to see why they act as policy enforcers and why they invade the private, going against the Supreme Court. It's all very interesting, isn't it? Given that they've now tarred, feathered, because they're in their defence mode, but at the same time, he must have a mental health issue or a prior condition to lashing out at someone pushing him down. Because red flag, oh, he lashed back at me because I slapped him. He lashed back at me because I grabbed him and held him forcibly. It's his fault that I was the Nazi. And that's what you're seeing on a world stage right now. As they try and keep a narrative going, it's collapsing around them. And it's because of the line of authority that they serve. And it's an unfortunate event. And I told you it was inevitable, because there is only one truth in the matter. The line of authority sealed by your Anzac when they sealed the Constitution in international waters under the rules of self-determination. 62,000 men spilt their blood across battlefields, and it wasn't for this. It wasn't for this man here to stand here and defend his line of authority that isn't the line of authority established in the Constitution, and then go asking for the sympathy inside his community at a total disregard for yours. And not only that, tell you that you're reliant on their community.
I don't have any information on the particular individual other than the information on our systems didn't give rise to any concerns that it was a high-risk incident they were attending.
So did that report come in earlier in the day? Like, where did this report come from?
The full circumstances will be provided at a later point. At this point in time, we're letting the initial investigators ascertain as much information as possible.
In terms of investigations, what other specific investigations that occur after an incident like this?
This is an investigation into an incident involving the death of a police officer, and obviously an incident where police officers have discharged their firearm and critically injured a member of the community, regardless of the circumstances. That requires a thorough and detailed investigation. It will be undertaken by major crime, and it forms part of our Commissioner's inquiry. The Commissioner's inquiry will look at the death and the circumstances that led to police arriving at that location and this incident unfolding.
Could you also just speak to the courage of the other two officers there last night?
For those two officers to act the way they did in such difficult circumstances speaks volumes for their courage and their commitment to their duty and to their colleagues. An injured police officer stepping in to provide potentially life-saving assistance to a colleague, and also the person who is suspected of having committed the offence, I think goes to their credit. To act in that way in such difficult circumstances is the reason you can only be proud of the South Australia Police.
In terms of Jason,
Look, I know nothing about the incident, but when they act that way, he knows everything about the incident. He's the line of command of the officer involved, and it's his duty to be involved, isn't it? There's no separation of power here where an independent investigation takes place. No, they'll investigate themselves because they're the line of authority that is the nanny to all of this. So, condolences to the people around the officers that died. But at the same time, sympathising with an enemy on an international stage when an international war is beholding you right now. What do we say about that? When you lead the people into human trafficking and real slavery for their sweat labour to continue paying the state all the time at your hand, at your hand. And now your Zionist backing and this WEF partnership, it's becoming apparent to everyone that you've screwed the entire Commonwealth, tried to undermine it, and elbow, clown show that was, trying to corporatise all of the tribal Aborigine away from their own sovereignty. Total clown show. And nanny government sits there asking for sympathy from the policing community at the cost of everyone else, because they're the ones they human traffic. All those humans out there, as Bill Gates put it, all those humans out there. So at the end of the day, do we sympathise with an enemy? Well, we have condolences that they died. But at the same time, they're the ones in the war crime. They're the ones committing the human trafficking. They're the ones that have, forgive them for they know not what they do. The Nuremberg said just following orders was no excuse at law. At law. So at law, the line of authority in question here also has to come into play, doesn't it? Who are you? Who do you serve? Do you define that to the private? Do you stop talking like they're members of the public? Anderson versus Commonwealth 1925, we already went through that. So your daily duties are in entering people's private property and then complaining that you got shot at for doing that. And then saying that the state has a right to enter into people's private. That's a big thing here in Australia that you've all misconstrued. Who owns the private? You all work for private industry. Who are those masters? Because they aren't you, are they? They treat you like the public, members of the public. Need to be fined all the time. Good little child, nannied by a state, ward of the state. But when you're not guardianed like a child, you know, that's supposed to grow up and become a grown-up, and you're kept as a child through your entire adult life by a slave driver, it's human trafficking and slavery on an international stage committed by these people connected to their money men and those that just follow orders. Are they sympathising with an enemy at law? At law. Because we're not talking about hearsay anymore. We're talking about foreign curial powers that have squeezed the blood out of a stone and put you into sweat labour and put the actual debt of a nation directly on your backs instead of in the usufruct. And that may go over some people's heads, but at the end of the day, it is a technical war crime. It is a literal criminal offence. And these people out here wearing that crown are the ones guilty of committing those offences of human trafficking. And now they want sympathy within their own ranks to continue doing the human trafficking, which is going to get harder and harder and harder because who's controlling them all to do their jobs? Who's fitting them out with military hardware for their own safety? Because the people disrespect them now.
Is there any more details you can give us his family circumstances?
Jason has a brother who lives in Dalesford and a mother who lives in Warrnambool in Victoria, and we're very grateful for the assistance of the Victoria Police. I've spoken directly with Commissioner Shane Patton, who has arranged for police officers to notify Jason's family members and also convey his brother to where his mother lives so that they can be together. Jason was 53.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So the media are involved. You can see the propaganda machine has already lined up the questions. separated the different arms, gone through their questioning period and closed it all off, and it, I suppose, a little bit respectful in that way. But at the same time, how do you say it? Condolences to the family that lost a life at the behest of money men. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to ask you very clearly, what, very specifically, what do you serve? Do you serve on an international stage? Because at one point, during BLM, which is a Soros enterprise, did the police around the world bend the knee? Now, why would you bend the knee? Is that some form of showing an allegiance to some form of rainbow power? Instead of a line of authority in a crown that your Anzac actually spilt blood to establish, to find on the money, to find in the Supreme Court as a reality amongst this big delusion. And you go and read those words on the Supreme Court, and they do say delusion. Because being accused of being in a delusion and being proven to be right might say that you live in a delusion, a deluded state of not knowing what line of authority you actually serve. And that might form part of the delusion. And we don't want people to die, especially Australians that are deluded as to who they serve. They might have some mental impairment under the Criminal Code 7.3, I believe it is. That delusion of not knowing your line of authority and of being able to establish it before God, under the blessing of Almighty God, as preamble to the Constitution says, right? So that line of authority has to start within the Scripture, doesn't it? Well, what if your line of authority is not within the Commonwealth? And then you start to realise that you're the one that's been harming your own countrymen for their own safety. And then because they've started to realise the Nazis that you became, you need to now arm your police officers with military hardware for their own safety. For everyone's safety we create war for the dollars. Let's peddle the dollars around the world for the devil men. For the devil men. And let's wear our crowns and ask for sympathy from our servants, the police force, and not the actual community at which they serve. Wonder why that is. Is there a conflict in a line of authority displayed by a crown that's on the front door of the Shrine of Remembrance where we're supposed to remember the dead? And in those pillars across the country and in all those towns and cities there, which these policy enforcers see it upon their own right to invade the private, because you're all humans out there, as Bill Gates put it. And those that had a genetic modification were party to the social engineering that was coming out of China. While China visited the US and Israel found itself amongst a circle of shit. Interesting history. Who do you serve? And we've been addressing Pauline Hanson this whole entire time. So Pauline Hanson, One Nation, who's the clown of the parliament with the burqa and everything, who's got Malcolm talking about the RBAs instead of the constitutional money supply. Who do you serve? Who do you serve? More immigration, said Albo. Why? Why? Destabilise! Woke them all! Why? Let's have sympathy for that, shall we? at the total disregard for who we are as a people. As a people. You disregard all of that to play all of you woke shit in the parliament with your money men. And I don't know if I should mention this. I got an email. Very interesting email. Apparently there's a bunch of criminals in that parliament. A lot of them. A lot of them. Shall we go down that path? Because the police don't seem to do anything about it. And those federal police haven't done anything about all those crimes that Albo committed during a referendum. And they won't do anything about the crimes that were committed on an international stage during a jabby-jabby. Who polices who, Pauline? Who do you serve? Who are the people? What's the line of authority? How does it establish everything from gods? From gods. From gods!